Just as a quick clarification, my name's Mitch Caesar. The other guy was the other Mitch. He was the smooth-talking one. I'm the chairman of the Democratic Party of Broward County, and I also have the honor, thanks to some of the people actually here, I sit on the executive board of the Democratic National Committee. That's the 45 people who sit on the board of directors of the country, of the Democratic Party of the United States. I represent the 14 southern states. But I'm really here for a totally different reason. I'm here basically because of a family reason, of which I see different members up in front of me who I've already spent some time with the family. I know Mr. Drayton honoree for a pretty fair amount of time. Originally met him through his sister, Frankie Thomas, who served admirably and beautifully as my first vice chair of the Democratic Party of Broward County for many, many years. And through Frankie, who kind of originally thought I was one of her students, but I didn't listen. And she in turn became a member of my family and myself and hers. Proved to be a very significant force in my life. I know her daughter's here, of course her brother, nieces, and so on and so forth. For any of us who are here who think we're here because we're doing Mr. Drayton a favor, you don't know Mr. Drayton. He's doing us a favor by sitting here and listening to this stuff, okay? That's the truth, and he's smiling already. He's done so much, and I won't be repetitive, but truly, the sense of history that I used to hear about the Drayton family and West Palm Beach, and the culture, and how that tied to the economy going back many decades, and how people weren't in school because they had to work and pick beans, as Frankie and the family used to tell me, and where we've come and where we are now, and because of the dedication of people like Mr. Drayton, who have cleared the path for all of us. Doesn't matter if we're black or white. It matters that he stands as a shining example of always being there, always pushing, always making sure that we were on the right path. That's the example that he sets, and that his family has continued to set. I'm going to deviate for a moment, and I know he'll forgive me because this is where he's coming from, as I know him and the family. And that is, I'll get political for 1 minute. And that is what we've all just gone through in this last presidential election. In a time where we had an African-American president who, if you listen to the talk a year or two ago, had no chance of winning. Who doesn't matter who the Republican was going to be, that Republican was going to win. They just had to become the nominee, God forbid. And then as it got closer, then it looked better and better for us, which is frankly the majority of the American people, and for our Democratic nominee, our president. But no one, including myself, could have ever expected they would ever come close to matching the historic victory he had in 2008. That was a wave year, and people said he rode the wave. This was a very different time, 4 years later. He and all of us had been through the mill, and yet he won by almost the same amount as last time. And yes. And it goes back to people like Mr. Drayton. You know, Dr. King talked about the urgency of now. Let's think about that for a minute. The urgency of now. And it's probably never been as applicable as it is today and what we all just went through. Going back just a short time ago, which seems almost a long time ago, but it was a few months ago, when we had the voter suppression acts of Governor Scott and the Republican legislature. And the long lines that lasted for hours and hours and hours of early voting. And I used to go to early voting sites and ask people why they were online for so many hours. And the answer, no matter who it was almost the same. Because they were angry. They were ticked off because it was clear what the intent of these laws were. It was clear as to prevent minority voting, prevent elderly voting, prevent a lot of voting. And instead it bounced back on them, and we had the greatest turnouts, the greatest participation of all communities, because people said they wanted power. Wrapping up, and that was the president's speech the other night. And he talked about two things. The first he talked about was about putting money into pre-K. Now, that's important, and yet realizing in talking to the entire nation and talking to a somewhat bizarre House of Representatives, he made a pitch by saying, listen, you need to put money into pre-K, not necessarily because it's the right thing to do, not necessarily because it's the intelligent thing to do, but because it's the economical thing to do. For all the people out there talking about money. And he talked about $1 spent in pre-K pays back dividend savings of $7 later. So even if you don't think it's the right thing to do it because it's the economic thing to do. And finally, the last thing he talked about was gun violence. Whether it was Aurora, or whether it was Newtown, Connecticut, or whether it was that poor girl in Chicago, that 15-year-old girl who had been at the inauguration, came home, came out of exams, and got caught in the crossfire of gangs in Chicago. And of course, we all know that gang violence and guns are not a new thing in poor neighborhoods. They have been around a long time. A long time. And maybe it takes some tragedies all across this country, and I think that's what the President was saying, for us to come together in the most difficult times ever for us to come together. And that brings us back finally to Mr. Drayton. He paved the path for many of us to do what we're doing, and for many of us to be here today, as did his whole family. And I enjoyed the comment earlier about he doesn't believe a meeting should be longer than 1 hour, if it was only true. And we could contain it that way. But he set the standard. He set the standard for all of us. And the best thing we can do in honoring him is not just be here today, but continue the works we're doing to fight for the principles we believe, for fight for those who can't defend themselves, and fight for what's just fair and right. That's what his life is about, and we give his meaning greater vibrancy if we continue the fight on with him and as long as we can go. Thank you very much.
We're going to let Commissioner and our Clerk Conley say a quick word before lunch.
I'm Dr. Jean Wright. I'm one of the Port College Commissioners. And I'm honored to be here today, and I thank the Florida Caucus of College County for having this luncheon to honor Mr. Drayton. I just want to say that Mr. Drayton over the years has spent tireless hours and dedication, leadership to citizens of of Palm Beach County and this community. And today I'm honored to present to you, Mr. Drayton, a resolution from the Port of Palm Beach, our chairperson, our chairman, Mr. George Bassett, myself, and the other commissioners, Barry Sickland, Ed Opal, and Wayne Richards, for your dedication and commitment to our community. Mr. Drayton, I present you with this resolution today from the Port of Palm Beach. I guess some of you probably think, why it's so large? Well, it really was supposed to be 8 by 10. The little girl, Jeannie, saw it. She said, Mom, you can't do this to Mr. Drayton. He has to have something that's big so he can see it, so he can read it. So thank you, Mr. Drayton, and we love you.
Dear Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we thank you. We praise you, Father, for this food that we receive. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.